All right, in this final lesson, we're going to take a look at using zone fog and how we can use that to optimize our levels, as well as add a bit of a visual effect to the levels themselves. And then we're pretty much going to wrap up the video, and that'll be it.
Okay, so we've gone back to the little cylinder and hallway room simply because we do have a very easy-to-see zoning effect in place here. So inside the first zone, or the cylinder part, I need access to the properties of the zone, so I'm going to do that by adding a zone info into that part.
Okay.
Zone info is simply being found up under the actor class browser, info, zone info.
Okay.
So let me just right-click anywhere within the zone to add the zone info, then I'll double-click it to load up its properties. So the first things we're looking at in here are under zone info, B distance fog. Let's set that to true. Then, since distance fog defaults for very large areas, I'm going to bring this in quite a bit to show the effect a little bit better.
Okay.
Maybe even start it at 256 and then not let it fade off till maybe 4,000.
So the fog itself is beginning 256 units from the character, and then it's going to be completely occluding or perfectly thick 4,000 units from the character.
That's right. And then in between there you have a kind of gradient or fall-off effect.
Okay.
So with that, let's see, let me rebuild so that it takes these properties into account. Now, there we do have the effect, but we were talking about how this can be used for optimization.
Right.
Well, when something gets past the distance or the fog end, it stops drawing because that fog end means that the fog is perfectly thick, perfectly opaque.
Right.
So there's no need to draw anything.
So in this case, basically anything that is 4,000 units from the player, or now 512, is going to be occluded and therefore not rendered.
Now, here's something to be careful of if you're in a tight indoor level, is it will occlude BSP, meaning that you'll get Hall of Mirrors effects as you can now see out into the level.
Okay.
Where this would be useful, however, is if you had a very large outdoor area like Antilus or Scorched, where everything's based in a giant cube. So the actual BSP is going to be very far away from you.
Right.
And more relevant stuff will be a lot closer, meaning you could set up the outer radius to some thousand units, and then static meshes or terrain or anything past that stops rendering, but your BSP is still far enough away where it won't be affected.
Makes sense.
So in this case, we can't really use the effect because it starts chopping off part of the level, so maybe up this back to 4,000. So we do get the atmospheric effect.
Okay.
Now, something else that's kind of interesting, if you tweak the fog color and actually set all the components to black, or all to 0, you can get kind of a creepy, shadowy effect, as you have fog, but it fogs to black. So it's kind of like being in a mysterious darkness. Even if part of the level is bright, it can still become dark at a distance.
That is really cool.
So with that, I can go ahead and jump into game real quick and actually take a look and see how this is working. I also want to point out a few other things before we wrap this all up.
Okay.
So everything drops into blackness once we get far enough away from it. So even though there's light on this part of the level or on that wall, it becomes dark as we run away from it.
That is really spooky looking.
Interesting effect.
Yeah.
Now, let me go back to R Mode 1 for a minute and talk about one last thing. If you remember, we have a zone portal set up in this doorway so that anything after it gets occluded. Or if you can't see the zone portal, then everything after it, the entire zone that it belongs to, is occluded. Now, we've taken a look at both zone portals and anti-portals now. So something cool is to use both of them together. The principle behind a zone portal is not only does it start blocking off once you can't see parts of the zone inside it, if you can't see it at all, the entire zone disappears.
Right, so as soon as the zone portal itself is occluded, you can no longer see the zone that's behind it.
Exactly. So if the zone portal were to be blocked by an anti-portal, then again, the same effect, the entire zone disappears.
Very impressive. So we just stepped behind the anti-portal we had in our level, and now that entire zone beyond our zone portal is gone.
Right. Definitely something to keep in mind is this is very powerful. It adds another level of control where from certain viewing angles you can very easily tell like that entire zone simply won't draw. And it's a very simple calculation too, since it's only the visibility of the zone portal itself, not things behind it. So just by stepping behind the simple wall, all of a sudden we have one less zone to draw.
That's awesome.
So definitely something to keep in mind as you're building and optimizing your level. But with that, that's pretty much going to wrap everything up as we've covered the various sections that we needed to touch on.
Okay, I mean, yeah, we have covered a lot of stuff. We talked about zoning and how zones can be created and used. We actually practically applied those inside of the Scorched Earth level. We talked about anti-portals and how they can be created and how best to use them. We talked about terrain optimization, how you can paint out the visibility of terrain, how you can change the sectors for how large its rendering sectors are going to be. We also talked about zone fog and how that can be used to not only occlude objects, but to create sort of a cool effect for your level itself. And really, I mean, that's going to wrap it up for this lesson and for this video. So I'd like to thank Logan for his excellent work, and thanks a lot, everyone.